All right, let's talk some Star Wars.
Let's do it.
Start with Phantom Menace up
hmm
to Rise of Skywalker.
hmm
Where do we have Phantom Menace?
I got him 6,
Whoa, that is high.
which is higher than most people.
I have it 9, dude.
Okay,
I have it 9 because I fell asleep. Like one of the times I watched Phantom Menace, I'd watched it like it wasn't the first time I watched it, but there was a long enough time in between that I kind of like forgot what happened. I fell asleep about halfway through, woke up right before the big fight scene. It was like, okay, hang on, I gotta go back. I went back. It was like I probably should have just not rewound this.
okay.
I just feel like there's
Yeah.
a the fight scene at the end is great, but other than that, it's like, what
Look,
are we doing?
here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say. Growing up watching it, the fight scene is absolutely iconic. Darth
hmm
Maul is amazing. Love Darth Maul as a villain. He's just so cool.
hmm
Seeing Qui-Gon, great character. Young Obi-Wan, all them fighting like that's just unreal, right? Like might
Yeah.
be the second best lightsaber battle in Star Wars. Okay,
Okay.
so that might be. I haven't ranked those, but it's up there. So that does something for it. The pod racing scene, I'm a fan. I loved it as a kid. I thought it was
Okay.
really sick. And then there's also just like I don't find Jar Jar to be that bad.
I don't
Most people,
either, but I don't find
most
him
people hate.
especially good.
No, he's not. But like I understand it's kind of a hot take. Most people think Jar Jar is like the worst character in like any
Yeah.
movie ever. I
I
don't
think
think he's
people are coming
that bad.
around. I think people are coming around as time goes
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
I just think this movie is so like dry and like I remember the end scene, right? There's so when you look at like the pros and cons, pros, you have the great end scene, you have a great lightsaber battle. It's the only movie with Qui-Gon in it. Like,
hmm
he's a good character. Young Obi-Wan's pretty cool. Darth Maul is a cool character, but it's like all that you can get all of that from watching like a 15-minute video on YouTube, basically, or what, like however long the fight scene is. You can just look up Qui-Gon Darth Maul fight, and boom, that's all.
Look,
Like I don't remember a lot of the details of this movie, and I don't really have any desire to go back and watch and find out.
hey, it's fair enough. It's not the greatest Star Wars movie out there, but I like it.
I'm
I
surprised
think
it's
it's a
all the way
good
up
movie.
there. I
I know.
Our list might be more different than I thought.
Yeah, just get ready. I got some takes coming. It's
Is
gonna
this
ruffle feathers.
is Attack of the Clones a hot one?
Attack of the Clones.
Is this a hot take?
I I guess this depends on who you're asking. I don't think so. I have it too.
That is a hot take.
It's
And
not, bro. It's
that's the
not
one
a
I
hot
was
take.
expecting. That was the
Okay.
one I was expecting from you because I know that you love this.
Yeah, then you're not.
Tell me why you love this one so much.
Yeah, you're not ready for the hot take then if you think this was the one. But
No way is there one. I think I know the one there.
just wait. Yeah, just wait.
I
We'll
think
get
I
there.
know what you're thinking, and I don't think it's as hot as you think, if I'm
Okay.
correct.
Okay. We'll get there.
Go for it.
So
Tell me why you like this so
here's
much.
why I love Attack of the Clones. At the end of the day, like the Clone Wars, like that period is just like the best part of Star Wars to me. Um, like if I'm being realistic, the Clone Wars show might be my favorite thing that Star Wars has to offer.
Okay.
But Attack of the Clones sets it up. What do you want? Like the clone battles that we have are just amazing. Everything from when Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan get into the arena on, like that's about
hmm
as good as you're gonna get of Star Wars. All the clones coming, the number of Jedis that you have that are in fights. Um, Count Dooku versus Yoda, great fight at the end. And I
hmm
really love seeing Anakin start to become his own as a Jedi. I can vividly remember like watching this movie for the first time. Like I remember being in elementary school and I'd gotten it as a present and like all day I'm just thinking about like, man, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna watch this movie. I can remember like talking to our vice principal about it. I don't know why, but it's like I'm going home like I'm so excited. And I went home as soon as I got home, just ran in, turned the TV on, watched this movie. It just it has a special place in my heart. It is such a good movie to me. Absolutely love it. Um, even
Yeah.
the opening scene when they're going through Coruscant, it's just unbelievable. So you're about as slanted as good.
I knew that
Bottom.
this one was so high on your list because
Yeah,
my primary again, I'll preface this by saying like the prequels, I haven't actually watched through them all in a while, so all I'm
yeah.
kind of going off of is like, the stuff that stands out to me, what I remember. And like my primary memory with this movie is sitting in your, I think what is now like your living room or something, just watching that arena scene and
Hmm.
you being like, dude, this is what we're like, you're gonna come over and hang out and this is what we're gonna do for like an hour.
Oh, it's the best, bro.
And
It's the
that
best.
was like that's like the biggest memory I have. And then the second one is not actually from the movie, but it's from playing the Lego game with
Great
Casey. I
game.
remember loving that fight between Yoda and Dooku at the end. I
Yeah.
remember loving playing that in the Lego game. So
Oh yeah.
it has a little soft spot there for me. I
Yeah.
have it at 7, so
Oh my
it's
gosh.
pretty low for me.
That's ridiculous.
I think I mean it's one of those I would say like Phantom Menace is the only one that I'm like I have no interest in going back and watching anything except that last scene. Like Attack of the Clones, if someone was like, "Hey, let's watch Attack of the Clones," I'd be like, "You know what? Sure, why not? I'll go back, refresh my memory. It's got some good scenes." You do have a good point with the Jedi thing. Like that's something the prequels, have in their favor is just the amount of Jedi that you get to see and the lightsaber battles and
Dude, like when
you
all
know
those lightsabers start turning on in the arena,
some
that's
people
crazy.
some people will say that like the fact that they're so good and stuff doesn't make sense. I've heard good theories to cover it, so I don't buy into that, complaint about the prequels. But yeah, I have it 7. Again, I don't have like, super detailed memories of it. Maybe it's one I have to revisit, but I think I would have a hard time moving it too far up just because I like the ones higher on this list a solid amount.
I think I think that's absurd and disrespectful to the second greatest movie and one of the greatest franchises ever, but it's fine. What can you do?
I
What can you
wonder,
do?
is it still one of the greatest franchises ever? That would be a big debate
Yeah.
people would
It's
have
it's
based
it's
on
gotta be
like based on,
everything.
the franchises that we have now and what Star Wars has done recently. People
Yeah.
would have that debate, I think.
Yeah. It's still gotta be up there as one of, I think,
Yeah.
but it would be
Yeah.
interesting.
All right, where do you have Revenge of the Sith?
Easiest decision on here. It's number one.
Is this the one that you thought was the biggest hot take?
No, this
Okay.
shouldn't be a hot take. This
Okay.
is
This is what I was thinking because I was like, okay, if he thinks this is a hot take, I don't think it's that bad. I think
no,
you
no.
have a lot of people that would agree with you.
Yeah. I feel like a large number of the people I've talked to have this in the top two at least. Like
Mhm.
um it's just start to finish so exciting. I mean, I get like goosebumps when they're starting up in space. Like that scene where they're flying through is so cool. Getting to Count Dooku or not, yeah, Count Dooku, Chancellor Palpatine, all that I love. Um, the number of action scenes are insane. Like the number of good lightsaber battles, right? Uh, like people sleep on Yoda versus Darth Sidious, that lightsaber battle, just because it's overshadowed by
Yeah.
Anakin and Obi-Wan, which is, I believe, the longest like sword fighting scene in any movie ever. Um,
Yeah, I believe it.
it's just such a cool one. I mean, the number of amazing things. The only thing to me that takes away from this one is just how heartbreaking it is at the end of the day, because you're just mad that it goes the way it does. Like you're just so mad at Anakin for
Uh-huh.
being an idiot the whole way through.
Yeah.
And but every time like I watch this movie, there's still that part of me is like maybe like what like maybe it's different. Maybe it'll go different. And then it's still the same and you just get mad all over again. But this is an easy decision for me. This is my favorite. This is the best one. And I don't even think it's close. But
Okay. I have it third, so not too much disagreement there. I think
hmm
for me, like, same preface as the other prequels. For me, the ones that stand out obviously is the ending, of
hmm
course, the big battle. And then also just when you think about what it means for like the overall story, I think it is pretty cool that regardless of what people think of the first two, because I think more people would agree with me on the first two than they would with you. Um,
probably,
I
probably.
think regardless what you think of the first two, when you have the original trilogy that you have, this is a pretty cool one to show like those final moments of him really turning.
Yeah.
So I think that, like you said, it's entertaining. It serves a big purpose in the franchise as a whole,
hmm
and that last scene is just unreal. And I mean, like the end of the Kenobi show this summer and like bringing back those feelings was it made me want to watch the movie again. I haven't
Right.
gotten around to
See,
it yet, but I think
it's so
I
good.
almost watched it today actually. I almost just threw it on, but I didn't. I was like, I don't know if I'll have time to get through the whole thing and
Yeah.
whatever. Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, fair enough. There you go. It's such a good movie to me. I love it. And I know people, this is the one thing I'll say. This is three and two. There's a lot of people that complain about like the acting within these two
Hmm.
movies. I just don't find it that bad. I don't know. It doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that just I know that's one knock that a lot of people have on it that I just don't really I don't know,
Yeah, I
doesn't
was
bother
gonna
me.
say I didn't want to bring that up because like I said, I don't remember the entire movie that well, but I don't think the acting is that bad. It's certainly once we get to the third one, like
Right. The
you
second
could
one
have your
is
qualms in like
yeah.
the first and second one maybe because they're younger and whatnot, but I think the third one, the acting is pretty good. I mean, it's not like it's, uh Leo DiCaprio drama or
Oh
something, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
right. Of
supposed to be
course.
at the end of the day.
No,
It's like
that's not why you're watching that
fantasy,
movie.
like we're talking about a guy who has his arms and legs cut off and is face down in lava and survives by putting on like a giant robot suit essentially, and they're
Yeah,
holding
right.
light swords. I mean, if you're watching that for the quality of acting, you might be watching the wrong franchise. You know,
That's a very
to
fair
each
point.
their own. Like if people want to enjoy it, and then that is something that they want to critique, then sure. But like
Yeah.
if you say, oh, like I don't like Star Wars because the acting's bad, it's like, all right, fair enough, but then why are you watching? Like
Yeah, watch
don't
something
come
else
in here
then.
expecting Oscar-worthy
Yeah,
performances.
yeah.
If it's a good acting, that's an added bonus to what you're supposed to be watching, which is just like
Cool
fun
story.
teenage guy. Like these are movies that teenage guys like because they don't care about acting. Just like, oh, that was fun.
Yeah, yeah.
You know
They're
what I
great.
mean?
Yeah, I
All
agree. I
right.
agree.
Where do you have the original Star Wars, A
New
New
Hope.
Hope?
I got it four.
Okay, so you have it right where episode
Yeah,
4, number 4.
exactly. I think
Okay.
it's a good movie. It's really enjoyable. The fact that it's the first one ever, there's certainly some
Mm-hmm.
um has a nostalgia factor. I think might be the first one I ever watched. I can't remember. So, um, it's a good one. It's just a classic. The one thing I'll say about this one that is an issue I have, and I have another friend that we debated this for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but his argument was always that the climax of the movie is too soon. Because you think about like the movie's building, 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 gets to the fight with Darth Vader and Obi-Wan, which is
Mm-hmm.
like feels like the climax, and then there's still like 30 plus minutes left in the movie. And I was like, I don't think it's that bad. Like, I think it's fine. It like builds and it's just really intense for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it again. This might have been this summer actually. And I kind of agree with him that it like hits this point that's like a climax. And then it feels like there's like 15, 20 minutes where it just is like chill. And it's weird and like doesn't seem like there's enough urgency. And it's just like, oh, okay, and let's go blow up the Death Star also. Um, which it's not like it ruins this movie and makes it bad, but it just I watched it again now, and maybe it's just partially as I'm older, like trying to like
Yeah.
being a little more critical, but it felt a little off. Like the tone of the movie in those like 30, 40 minutes felt a little off. But still an iconic movie, great movie. I love it. But yeah,
Probably one of the most iconic movies ever, just because of
absolutely.
what it did at the time, the
Yeah.
technology that it was able to use. I have it number 1 on my list because,
Whoa.
yeah, I know. I was honestly a little bit surprised that I did this myself.
Okay.
Um, but I think it's so rewatchable for me. I feel like it could be on at any time and I'll throw it on and watch it because I feel like at times there are some movies where if it's the first in a series, I don't necessarily know if it's rewatchable because I feel like I need to watch the other ones after.
Hmm.
Whereas I feel like this one, maybe I don't know all the details behind how it was made and whatnot, but it feels like when you watch it, it feels like they just made a movie and then ended up doing sequels and stuff because it was good. And like he
Mm,
may have had this in his mind, but it feels like they didn't do this with the intention of like
interesting.
going forward and making what they have made now, no matter
Yeah,
what. Like I feel like
yeah.
you can sit down and watch this and be content just watching this and then going and doing something else with the rest of your day. So I think it's
You really
super
feel like
rewatchable.
it doesn't need the next two at least?
I don't personally. Maybe that's because I know what happens in the next
I was
two,
gonna say because like Darth Vader
but
doesn't really get defeated.
yeah, but I feel like it's just I don't know. You have like this big plot, which the Death Star is coming. It's this big, planet thing. They blow up the Death Star, and it's like nice. We did what we set out to do. I think there certainly is an aspect of like, okay, well, there still could be so much more that happens, but I don't feel like when I watch it, I sit there and it ends, and I'm like, oh man, I need to know what happens next, or else I'm not going to be able to live. You know,
But yeah,
it doesn't
I
feel
mean,
as open ended as some series do.
interesting. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I feel like it doesn't really resolve the story. Like the rebels don't really win the war, right? It feels just like
yeah,
okay, they won a battle that's like a step in the right direction because it's a big one, but it's still like the Empire is still super powerful. Like nobody has taken them down. So theoretically, like they're still gonna go dominate the universe, the
yeah.
galaxy.
Fair. I feel like they do a good job of leaving themselves with some room to make a sequel. Like Darth Vader's
Hmm.
alive, whatnot. But I
Right,
feel
right.
like
But
there
still
also
wrapping
is
it
a
up.
self-contained story in there. It's not
Yeah, it
like
doesn't
a
end on like a cliffhanger or
Yeah,
something. So
exactly. Like
yeah,
if it had ended, I think if that was the only movie they made, I think people would be like, there probably would be questions about like, oh, well, what happens to Darth Vader and
right,
what
right.
happens here? But I don't think it would have been the end of the world if it was like, I think it's just a good movie by itself as well.
Interesting. Cool,
Yeah.
cool. Where do you have Empire Strikes Back?
I have Empire Strikes Back second, and I'll explain why, because this is probably number one for a lot of people.
Hmm.
When I'm thinking about it, the big thing for a lot of people is being a kid or being an adult, whatever, when this came out and the big
Hmm.
twist. And
Hmm.
that is the big, or whenever you saw it, the big twist for the first
Hmm.
time, right? But when I'm sitting here now thinking about it, yes, that's a super cool moment. It's one of the most iconic moments in film history. But
For
I know
sure.
it's coming every time now,
Yeah.
and so when I'm
Without that
thinking about
surprise,
right now, which one would I rather watch, knowing like what the twist is, I feel like I would probably rather sit down and just watch A New Hope because it's more self-contained, in my
hmm,
opinion. And
interesting.
and yeah, I know I know the twist and what's coming, and it's not like there's that suspense of that moment for me.
Interesting.
Where do you have
Yeah.
it?
I have it nine.
Whoa!
I told you I was coming with a hot take. I hate this movie. I hate it. I think it's a bad movie. See, you weren't ready. I tried to warn you. I tried to warn you.
No way.
I think this movie is so bad. If I was
Why?
like, if I'm stranded on a desert island and I only have one movie and it's this movie, I'm packing it up. I'm just like, that's fine. I'm not like, I'll live the rest of my life without movies. I think it's awful.
No way.
It just start to finish, it doesn't do anything for me. I think it's boring. Um, I'm inclined negatively. I don't like a lot of older movies. I understand they had limited resources, but it just looks so painfully fake. Like the scene on Hoth, it's just like it looks terrible to me.
I will say I
The
do not like the scene on Hoth. Like if I
Yeah,
was it's just I don't know. I feel like if I'm watching these back to back and the first one ends and I'm like, all right, here we go. Number five, let's get into it. And it
yeah,
starts there. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. We gotta get through like
yeah,
all this.
yeah. The only like slightly redeeming quality to this movie is the twist and like the significance that has for the series as a whole and for like honestly cinema in general because that was
Yeah.
such a monumental thing. But I'm just sitting out like I had it a little higher on the list because of that. But it's just I really hate this movie. Like it's not even that I think it's
Wow.
lesser of a bunch of good movies. Like I would rather not watch this movie. I never have liked it. I've always hated it. I've tried to go back and rewatch it because I thought
I cannot
maybe it's because
believe
I was a
that.
young kid and it just, I don't know, something jarred me, but I think it's terrible.
No way.
I told you,
So even
hottest take we
like
might ever have.
even like the training scene, like none of that.
The training scene is awful. That scene puts me to sleep.
Wow.
I think it's so boring.
I cannot believe that.
There's no scene in this movie that I'm like, yeah, I would want to watch it. Like there's not even a redeeming scene.
Wow.
It just I hate this movie.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
cannot
Let
believe
that
that.
sink in. That's the one I'm gonna get destroyed for because I know most people have. I think the largest amount of people would have it number one. Like that's
Yeah,
probably the most popular, like best
I think
movie
so
ever in Star
too.
Wars.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you thought you were being a little bold putting it at two, because
No way.
yeah,
You think Empire Strikes Back is the worst Star Wars movie?
hmm I think it's really bad.
That is, man, wow, man. I mean, I
There you
will say it
go.
is carried by that twist. Like when you think about all the scenes in the movie, a lot of it I think gets lost because the twist is so big. But I think you
hmm
could say the same about some of the other movies. But
But look,
wow, that was something.
there you go.
So wow, I so every time we do these, I kind of try and like piece together where I think stuff's gonna fall on your list as we're going, and that throws a lot off. Where do you have where do you have six?
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
I have it third. I really like this movie.
Okay,
This
so
is a
this
really
one's
good
third for
movie.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I really enjoy it. Seeing Luke as his own, like he's really a Jedi now. It's really cool to watch.
Hmm.
The dynamic between him and Darth Vader as that sort of comes together is really great. I love the ending, right? It's a really iconic or just really beautiful ending, in my opinion. Darth Vader coming around, coming back to the light side and basically like sacrificing himself almost like to save his son, right? Like that. It just I love it. So
Hmm.
there's so much about this movie that I like. I enjoy a lot of the location, the way it takes place. I just think it's a really good movie. Not necessarily third by like a lot, but for me, the top three has always been easy. And this one slides
Wow.
into that third slot.
So this is one where there's two spots that I'm trying to figure out which one it goes in. I think I'm gonna put it fourth,
Okay.
partially for the nostalgia and like it's the old trilogy.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I agree with a lot of what you say. I mean, the biggest criticism I feel like of this movie is like, oh, it's basically the fourth one redone, sort of. But I feel like that's such an easy criticism to debunk because if you think about it, right, the Death Star was this huge plan, right? This was the
Mhm.
Empire's big plan,
Mhm.
and it didn't work. It got blown up because there was one, like, imperfect part of it.
Mhm.
So if you're the Empire, and you're like, okay, we did one thing wrong.
Why would
Would
we
you
not
would
try
you
again?
not try again?
Yeah.
I mean, that
Like
was like
it's not like you
I
were
feel like that is so. I mean, like we were saying, this is not you're watching this for realism, right? Like it's it's high fantasy, sci-fi,
but
whatever.
still there has to be like
It's
basic
I feel
principles.
like that is a very reasonable thing to expect them to do,
I agree.
is to
And
like
it's
let's try it again and maybe do it better this time.
right. And it's not like the Empire's resources were greatly debilitated, right? Because the win that the rebels had was just they destroyed this Death Star, right?
Right.
It's not like we destroyed the Death Star, couple steps forward. Now like the Empire is in like retreat, like now they're starting to feel the attack of the rebels, right? It's just
Right.
we had this great plan that was going to really like just we're going to dominate the galaxy now, and it's like we're no one's ever going to be able to touch us,
Hmm.
and they stopped it quick. So it wasn't like the Empire sitting back like, well, what are we going to do now? It's just like, all right, we can keep our reign going as it was before. There's just like you said, this one issue. Let's just put this back together, and then we can still destroy the galaxy, basically. Like
Right.
I don't think it's that bad. And yeah, so I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah. I think my biggest, like the reason that I don't have it higher, and I probably would flip it with Revenge of the Sith if I were to do anything, would be I don't know why, but I just don't love like the beginning with Java. It's
Mm,
not maybe to the point of like Empire with Luke and like the Yeti or whatever that thing is, but it's just kind of like I'm again like I'm ready to go, and then we get to this scene. I'm kind of like I feel like I would rather like not start here.
yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
exactly what it is about
yeah.
that scene, but it's kind of just like it almost just kind of feels like a slow start a little bit. There is some
Mhm.
cool stuff like, you get to see Luke kind of knowing the Force a little bit better. Um, I honestly wish that there was more of that in this movie, like just watching Luke like know the Force and be really, really good at it. I don't know how much room there is to do that because there
Yeah.
is only like two people for him to fight in the whole
Mhm.
universe, basically. But I think it would have been cool to see like more of Luke with the Force. Thankfully, we
Yeah,
got some of that with like Mandalorian and a
yeah,
little bit of Book of Boba Fett, but um, that would probably be like my two kind of qualms with this. It's just like the beginning, I feel like a little slow. I don't love it, and then I just wish there was like more of Luke
yeah,
being awesome.
yeah. That's fair. I like the beginning. It's not like this crazy intro
Yeah,
that there's a few others that I like more in Star Wars. But I still like it. So,
yeah,
but I get that. It's fair.
yeah.
Yeah.
The only other like complaint I feel like people have is the ending when they redid it. And obviously now it's like because of the prequels, we have Hayden Christensen as the Force Ghost, which I do very much understand that complaint.
Yeah.
And I love the memes of like, Luke being like, "Oh, Master Obi-Wan, Master Yoda, some random guy." Because it is a very, very fair complaint, I feel like,
Yeah. Yeah.
to be
100%.
like, how would he know who that is?
Yeah.
Um, all right, let's go on to the sequel trilogy. Man, this will be interesting. Where do you have The Force Awakens?
I have Force Awakens 5.
Okay.
So, um, my thoughts on this one, there's a similar kind of theme throughout all three of these newest movies that like I find them all to be enjoyable, like entertaining movies. Um, but it just they don't all feel like Star Wars to me. The
Okay.
Force Awakens is kind of the one that feels most like Star Wars to me.
Hmm.
Um, I really enjoy this movie. There's really two things that bother me. One is the fact that they really like it really just is a New Hope
Yeah.
again. Um, and not in a different way than like the sixth and then Return of the Jedi, right? Where it's the same basic premise, start to finish,
Right.
right? Find this person that's young, more or less alone. They have these powers. You don't realize it. They kind of start to follow um, big, massive weapon that's going to destroy planets. And this one, it's just a bigger weapon than the
Yeah.
Death Star.
It's like built into
Um,
the side of a planet or something in
right.
this one.
Gets to the end, an old figure that's really instrumental gets killed by, son versus their Padawan. Like it's just there's too many
Yeah.
overlaps where it's like this is just the same thing. Um, so I love A New Hope. I find this movie really enjoyable. Like I like the story, but it's not very unique. And then the other thing that really bothers me is the fight at the end. Like Kylo Ren is like the
Mm.
supreme Sith, right? This guy's supposed to be unstoppable. And basically Finn and Ray both hold their own against him and are fine. It's like,
Well, Finn is certainly not fine.
but he doesn't. They don't get destroyed. Like
Yeah.
to me, it's like, come on, that should just be an easy. So that's the only two. But I enjoy the movie. I
Yeah.
really liked it when it came out. It was obviously a huge deal when this movie was
Yes.
coming out.
Huge.
Um, and I didn't walk away like really disappointed after
Hmm.
watching it. Um, but it's not good enough to crack the top five for me with those other movies that I love.
I also have it fifth, right under Return of the Jedi for me. I think honestly, up there with New Hope, this is one of the first ones that I would turn to if I was going to rewatch any of them. Just sit down and watch a Star Wars movie. I really really like this movie. I think it's pulled down in my rankings because I know where it goes a little bit.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I think for me, the ending, I do understand um that there's a little bit you have to kind of like suspend disbelief a little bit, but I think because I've done so much digging around on the internet about theories and all this stuff with what like explanations, and people have, really bent their backs to explain how like Kylo Ren could struggle with these people who just pick up a lightsaber and stuff like that. It's like when I if I am being generous and giving credit to that, like I can believe that it would happen because he was so like broken inside and stuff, and it like whatever threw him off kind of thing.
Yeah.
So when I want to, and I usually do with this movie because I always want these movies to be as good as they
100%.
possibly can be. I can kind of like excuse some of the stuff that in at first glance is kind of like, okay, that doesn't make sense. Um, but I really, really like Rey's character, partially I think because of how well Daisy really plays her.
Hmm.
I really like her character. I really like Kylo Ren. I think it's a cool kind of antithesis from Darth Vader in that you have
Hmm.
someone that was, light to dark. Now you see his grandson starting on the dark side and is like struggling with the pull back to the light almost. Um, so I really like that. And
I
I
mean, he technically
think
started on the light side, but
right, but it from
but he
what
mainly right. Yeah.
when we see him,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
on the
Fair.
dark
Fair.
side and
Sure.
he's feeling the
Sure.
pullback.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree with that.
and then I think that they did a good job, not a great job, but I think they did a good job with like fan service in this movie, bringing back some of the older characters. I feel like
Hmm.
they could have potentially done better. I think obviously the way to do that would have been like more Luke, because
Hmm.
he's kind of the one that I feel like people really want to see.
Yeah.
So, if maybe like half the movie, and it could have helped them to kind of differentiate from A New Hope as well. Like if half the movie was like searching for Luke, and then the second half of the movie was something from there, it
Yeah.
maybe would have helped it feel a little different. But I do think that like Han and Chewie were great in this one, and I think that the way that they were setting up the trilogy did make sense in that they wanted each of the original like three stars to have their own movie focused on them, um, which kind of had a wrench thrown into it in later movies when Carrie Fisher passed. But when you think about that, it's understandable, I feel like.
Hmm.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
think this is just one of the ones like I would go back and watch this one a lot. And I have gone back and like when it's on TV, I'll go back and watch it for like half an hour or however long I'm sitting there. Um,
Yeah.
but it is pulled down by the others, unfortunately,
Yeah.
for me, which leads us
Yeah.
into The Last Jedi, which I have a feeling that you are not a fan of because of the way that you spoke about Force Awakens. I think it applies more to this one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
where do you have
So
The Last Jedi?
I have it eight.
I figured.
Um, Same thing where it's like very like a very enjoyable movie to me.
Maybe
Uh,
maybe the best movie. If we're
Maybe like
talking about just straight filmmaking and like that aspect of it,
sure.
maybe the best movie out of the
Yeah.
nine. But
Like if this trilogy wasn't Star Wars, like if it was just like a fantasy series on its own where a lot
mhm,
of similar stuff happened, I would love I would really like all three of these, right? But
mhm,
The Last Jedi just and part of my issue is there's just they did this a lot in the new trilogy where they introduce like a lot of things that you can be done that are super powerful. That is just like, why have we never
right.
seen this before? Like a going to hyperspace and shooting through another ship and destroying it.
Yes.
Why has nobody ever done that before? Like that
Yeah.
feels, and then the whole thing with Leia where she's just out in space and like just sucks herself back in. It's another one I'm just like, okay, that's like a crazy thing to be able to do. And like we said, like it's a fantasy movie, like crazy stuff is always happening.
Yeah.
But it's like precedent. Like there's laws within this fantasy world that all the people are like abiding by, right? Like the Force was we've never seen any reason to think that Leia could do something like this, and it's just a little too crazy for me. So it's just a number of things like that where I'm like, I don't know, that just seems a little out there, and it just felt too much to me. Like, okay, we're making a Star Wars movie. This is a big deal. We have to go big with crazy stuff. Um, and so that's kind of what my issue with it. Like, it's not like I'm watching this. I think it's a bad, unenjoyable movie to watch, but it doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. And there's too many things that I'm just like, okay, where is this coming from? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
I have it at 6, right under Force
Mhm.
Awakens. Um, for me, like I was saying, it's one of the best just technical movies. There's so many just awesome shots. Like that scene where they go hyperdrive through the other ship is a super, super cool shot where it just
Oh
everything
yeah,
goes silent. And
yes.
I remember being in the theater and like feeling that the whole theater was silent watching that.
Mhm.
The Red Room is awesome. That's some great fighting. Um, I do have a problem with that scene in that
Yeah,
like the ending just feels like I watched a different it feels like I watched a scene and then they put in an ending from a different scene that they shot when it feels like Ray and Kylo have this understanding and then all of a sudden it's like different and it just
yeah,
doesn't kind of line up
yeah,
super well to me.
yeah.
The beginning I mean this was I mean we're sitting here anticipating this movie for 2 years on one of the biggest cliffhangers potentially in cinema history with Luke and the lightsaber and the beginning just felt so unsatisfying.
Mhm.
um and you can get into the whole like it's disrespectful to the weapon and all that stuff, which is like whatever. I don't take it that seriously. It just felt like so unsatisfying to me,
Yeah,
the beginning, and it's just like a bad taste in my mouth to start the movie. I did walk out of this movie and really enjoy it.
right.
This is one that's kind of dragged down by the overall trilogy, which I'll speak about in the next when we
Yeah.
talk about the next movie. But I think one of the problems with this movie is that Ryan Johnson tried to make a good movie that exists in the Star Wars universe instead of making a Star Wars movie,
Exactly.
which would be fine if he was making his own standalone movie or his
Hmm.
own
Hmm.
trilogy that was entirely him. But it just feels like he did not faithfully try to continue what J.J. Abrams had started out. And I can totally understand there are people that will say that he did fine with it, like he interpreted it in his own way, and that logically the stuff that
Hmm.
happens in this movie could have followed the last one.
Hmm.
But for me, if you're making a trilogy, there has to be continuity throughout, and this one just so clearly interrupts that. And it's only the second one. It's not like it was the third one and they had to land it and they didn't. It's like we got started and now we are changing direction almost. And I know people who really, really enjoy this movie, and it's great that they do. I love that they do. But for me, the whole like I watched Star Wars for the Skywalker Saga, especially if it's like a main episode 1 through 9. If it's in the Skywalker Saga, I watch it because of like the family lineage and it's super cool. And I like that it's tied into Luke and Anakin and all this stuff. It's a movie about a family at the end of the
Hmm.
day. So for me, the whole idea that people get behind around with this movie that like, oh, the Force can come from anywhere, and the rebellion reaches the ends of the galaxy with like the Broom Kid and whatnot. It's like that's a cool message, but do it in a different movie. Like
Hmm.
I when I wanted Rey to like, be a Kenobi, be a Skywalker, whatever. And so when you walk out of this movie and it's like Rey is nobody, Like, well, that's kind of disappointing to me. I remember being very, very disappointed. And then, going through my internet search of like, okay, how could she still be someone?
Which she
Um,
was.
which she did end up being, but I don't necessarily
Yeah.
love how they did that either, to be quite honest. Um, but yeah, I just think, and another issue, the fact that Ryan Johnson directed this, he has gone on record and said that he thinks a good movie should like split people in half into like some people love it and some people hate it. And when you're making a movie like in a franchise like this, I don't think that's the approach that you want to take. I think it is the
Mhm.
approach that he did take, and I think it did exactly what he wanted it to do, which unfortunately has left the fan base in not a great place here
Yeah.
for the next like 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, but this is a movie that I think if it was outside of Star Wars, I think I would love it. Or if it was outside of this saga, even if it was in Star Wars, just not in this, uh, you know, chronologically, chronological universe, I think I would really like it. But
Mm.
because it takes place on this timeline, I think I can't put it any higher than I did.
Yeah.
So
Fair enough.
does that mean you have Rise of Skywalker seventh?
That's correct.
Okay, I
Seventh.
have it
Yeah.
eighth.
Okay. So it's another one where it just like this movie just didn't feel like Star Wars. I was really excited for it. There's a lot of things I enjoyed about it. It was a fun movie to watch. There's a lot of really cool shots.
Mhm.
Um, I think when they're going to the abandoned like cruiser or whatever over the water, that area is really cool. The lightsaber battle over there, like I think it looks really cool.
Yeah,
Um, this is another example though of it felt like they were just trying to go big and do crazy stuff, and it felt too much. I really don't like Emperor Returned. I
yeah.
just it just is like too much of a like he's dead, he's been gone,
It felt like
and all of a sudden
a
it's like
big cop out.
right, it's like oh he's back and he's more powerful than ever with
Yeah,
in some ways like with this huge army and like when all of the rebel ships come in and they're like invading and it's just the Emperor just like boom electrocute the sky like all of you stop. It's just to me it's like where did that like
yeah.
what just happened like
This
how is
also
this.
came a couple months after Avengers Endgame as well,
Yes.
in which we saw like this. Oh no, the hero's on its last legs. Don't worry, here comes the army.
Right.
And so
It,
when you're the second one to do it, it
which is
didn't
unfortunate.
hit
But then
quite as well.
it didn't work though, because the army like he shut it down. And there's too many things like I've listened to the explanations of why Rey is able to do some of the things she can do,
Hmm.
but um the whole she kills Kylo and then is like, oops, my bad, and then just like heals him, undoes it. Is like what are we talking about?
Yeah.
When and I guess it technically is like possible when you understand how powerful like the Palpatine lineage
Yeah.
is, Skywalker lineage is, but there's just too many moments where I was just like, really? Like this is the route we're gonna go? Really?
Yeah.
Um, there were some really cool moments. I do really like, I think the connection between Rey and Kylo is super cool.
Hmm.
And I love like the moments at the end where they're both fighting and they do like the hand the lightsaber to each other behind the back. Like stuff like that is really cool. And there's a lot that I did love about this movie, but I don't like the ending. And it could easily be switched with Last Jedi for me and B8, Last Jedi 7, but there it's just hard. So I just kind of have it 7 that there is enough that I enjoyed about the movie, but
Hmm.
overall I'm just as a Star Wars movie, I'm left really dissatisfied with it.
Yeah. For me, like I said with the last one, where the last one, um, it felt like, there was a clear disconnect in what the directors were thinking about doing, and Ryan Johnson did not pick up where J.J. Abrams left off. I think J.J. Abrams could have said, okay, you know what? You did not go where I was hoping that you would go when I planned this out. But that's okay. I'll take it. Make the best of it.
Right.
I think he did the exact opposite. I think he took the reins back and he said, nope, I am gonna try and go back to what I wanted to do as much as I possibly can. I mean, direct shots at Ryan Johnson in the movie, like it just felt so obnoxious. Like it felt like he took this fight that they should have had off screen and a conversation that they should have had on off screen and used the biggest platform in the world to show it off. And I just hate that. I just think
Yeah.
like I was saying that these movies are all brought down. It just makes me so sad that right like my uncle is the person that got me into Star Wars. So he had the original trilogy. That was his Star Wars. Then there was a generation who grew up on the prequels. This is the closest thing that we have, really, is this sequel trilogy. This is like we were interested in Star Wars, and then bang, right in our teenage years, they started a sequel trilogy. Super excited about it. Loved the
Mhm.
first one. The second one I was okay with at the time, but then now that it's a true trilogy,
So,
they just don't work. And it's just made a
yeah.
mockery of Star Wars. It's so disappointing. It is
Yeah.
just so frustrating that now this is just part of the canon. Like this is just there. When you
Mhm.
watch, when you go back and, no matter what, you watch Phantom Menace, right? You know where that's going. You know where Attack of the Clones is going. You know where all of this is leading to, and you know that this is how it ultimately ends. Like this is where Anakin Skywalker's whole story ends, is with this movie. It is just so
Um,
sad to me.
Yeah.
And like you were touching on, I think one of the big issues plot wise is just amount of like fake outs and just insincere moments, it feels like.
Mm.
When they're in the desert and you have a super cool scene that they used in like every trailer where she backflips that whatever that is, the little, cruiser or whatever
Yeah.
he's driving at her, and they're taking, Chewbacca or whatever, they're taking them away, and they're basically like fighting with, she's trying to pull it
Pull it
back,
back.
and then she destroys it. And it's like, oh no. She just, killed him. Like she blew it up. Nope, he's all right. Don't worry about it.
Like we just somehow
You know,
missed that there was another ship,
Yeah,
and then that
she
one goes away.
stabs Kylo Ren. Oh man, she's gonna have to deal with the moral consequences of that. She just killed someone. Is she gonna think that she's on the dark? Like when she runs into Palpatine, she's gonna have that in the back of her mind now. Nope, don't worry. Heals it and moves on. You
Right.
know. Uh oh no, she dies at the end. She sacrifices herself. What a noble thing to do.
I forget
Oh
about this
no,
part.
don't worry. Kylo is
He's
gonna
fine.
save
Yeah.
her. Like it's just and like you were saying about The Last Jedi, all of these unestablished things, it's like it just feels like some of this stuff should have been established. I agree that the dyad is super cool. It's super cool. They can
Mhm.
pass a lightsaber or whatever. It just feels like that should have been at least referenced
That's
maybe in the previous one, even. Like this is not,
yeah.
I'm not
That's
saying that
fair.
they had to have mentioned this in like Attack of the Clones and it had to be this long established thing. But maybe in Last Jedi, Rey says, "Hey, Luke, maybe the top five most powerful Force users that's ever lived. Hey, this weird thing is happening where like we're kind of like we're seeing each
Yeah.
other and like it's kind of like we're in the same place, but we're not." And he's like, "Oh, listen, this is what that is." And then Rey can explain, like,
Right.
at least give us something like that. Don't just all of a sudden in the last episode of this 9 episode trilogy be like, oh yeah, there's this thing called a force dyad, and you can like pass things through space to each other.
Yeah.
It's like
No, that's very fair.
it
Like
just doesn't make sense.
there's too many things. This trilogy, right? It's fantasy. There's crazy. It's this alternate world, but they have 6 episodes plus other one-off movies plus TV shows, a
Mhm.
long Clone Wars show, all these things that have established what this world is. And to come out with all these things that just over all of that has never been even remotely alluded to that it could be possible. It's just kind of like, all right, like you're just trying to go big with something and you're not really concerned with being authentic to what Star
Yeah,
Wars is and has been. And so
yeah.
that's why, yeah. I agree.
It's just so, and I mean, I don't even know who to blame at this point. Like, it's just because, okay, so you start from the top, right? And you have Disney creating this trilogy with no plan. They just
Yeah,
go in there with, I mean, if you're creating something intended to be a trilogy, you need to have a plan for the entire trilogy. You need to have a storyboard for that.
yeah,
And then within that, you need to figure out how to make individual movies that are individually entertaining and play into the whole story. They did not do that. Instead, they got two different directors to split the three movies, and they did it in the most disjointed way they could have done it. It's not like they
it's
went,
terrible.
JJ, you get 7 and 8. Ryan, we're bringing in the closer to finish this thing out. Or Ryan, you're starting us off. JJ, you get to see his story and then finish it with the last two. No, they said, all right, JJ, you're going to start it. Ryan, you're coming right in the middle. And then JJ, you're going to have to clean that up at the end as well.
Yeah,
Like,
it just doesn't.
why are they doing that? And then once they do that, the directors don't even have the sense to try to work together and make something of it. And now both of them are going to be attached to this trilogy for the rest of their life. And I think it should diminish some of what they do because they got the keys to what was at the time maybe one of the most valuable franchises in the history of the world, and they
Yeah,
drove it into the ground.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's just sad, and we've been ranting about it for a while. It's probably the longest that we've spent on a movie, but it's just sad because
yeah,
this is this is what you know, this is the Star Wars that we grew up with, basically. Like this was the
yeah.
one that came out during our time,
And it wasn't. Yeah.
and it's
I will
disappointing.
say, you made the comment earlier about like, is this still a classic franchise? And in my head, it like is, but the more I think about it, the more we think about these movies, for me, it's really like it's almost a mediocre one because the amount of like there's the movies that I love, but really the thing that to me still has it is a great, great franchise is the shows that have come in. Like I love,
Yeah.
love, love the Clone Wars. I've really loved the Mandalorian. These other like some of the
Hmm.
one-off movies they've done are good. Um, of the episodes, like right, like the 9 movies, like this is Star Wars. Everything else is just flowing from it. There are way too many in there that I'm just like, I don't love this. I really don't. Like it's mediocre to bad to me.
Yeah.
It's literally like half of it, right? And so that's why when we're talking about series, this doesn't compare to the Marvels, the
Marvel, Harry
Harry
Potter.
Potter.
I mean, people, Lord of the Rings, I think, is
Yeah,
one that people would have
right.
up
Lord
there.
of the yeah, Lord of the Rings. I don't go crazy about it, but I can appreciate the like beauty of that story, like how
Right.
amazing it is.
Right.
Lord of the Rings has got to be a better story to me. Even like the Dark Knight trilogy, right, which is
Yeah.
obviously my favorite movies, but like that's a series that that's better than Star Wars for me. There's just too many that it's disappointing when you
Like to
look at what has
me,
happened.
honestly, right now, if you're comparing Star Wars to other franchises, you have to compare it more to like the DCEU than you can to like a Marvel, which is
Yeah,
not good.
not what you want ever.
In the sense that there are some really solid movies in there. But there are also some movies that it's like I have no interest in watching those again.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's
And
sad.
yeah, who knows? It yeah, it's disappointing. But
Yeah. All right,
run
let's
through
run
them.
through them one more time. Uh, Going from 9 to 1, I
Yeah,
have episode 1, Phantom Menace, episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, episode 2, Attack of the Clones, episode 8, The Last Jedi, episode 7, Force Awakens, episode 6, Return of the Jedi, episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, and episode 4, A New Hope, aka Star Wars, when it
AKA
originally
Star.
came out.
Hey, very different list. I got Empire Strikes Back, episode 5 at 9. Got Last Jedi 8, Rise of Skywalker 7, Phantom Menace 6, Force Awakens 5, A New Hope 4, Return of the Jedi 3, Attack of the Clones 2, Revenge of the Sith 1.
It's not even like you having Empire below the prequels is not even the most surprising to me because I know that you love the prequels. I can't believe it's below the sequels.
Hmm. Look, I told you when I came on here, when we got started, I said I'm about to have a take that will probably go down. No matter how many episodes of this we do, this take will probably be the hottest one that either of us ever have.
Yeah, and I think
And
you
I,
are
I've
not out of your
look,
depth to say that now
I've
that I've
I've
heard it.
I've taken heat. Yeah, see, you weren't even fathoming it, right? You're thinking about what am I going to
No.
say about episode 3, episode 2.
Yeah.
Look, I've taken my heat for it for a long time. I'm okay with it. I feel pretty strongly that it's bad. So that's the list.
When was the last time that you watched it? I'm curious.
It's been a few years.
Have you watched it since like the Rise of Skywalker came out or Last Jedi?
I don't know.
I wonder if you watched it now, like
Yeah,
after having seen those,
yeah,
if you would rank it below them still.
yeah. I remember the most recent time it was on TV, whenever this was, and I was like, man, I always say I hate this movie. Maybe I'm a little older. Let me give it a chance. And after a while, it's just like, no, this is as bad as I remembered. I'm not watching it anymore. I stopped.
Mm,
So there you go.
crazy.
What can I
That's
say?
crazy. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Rank and Debate podcast. We really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did and you're watching on YouTube, please consider hitting the like button. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcasting service, please consider following the podcast, subscribing, whatever it is you do on that podcast service, and tell a friend about our podcast. It'd be really cool if we could get some more people listening to this, more people sharing their opinions on these lists. So, if you have a friend that you think would like our podcast, feel free to send it over their way or just mention it to them. That would be really awesome. Hope you have a great day.